Welcome to Into the Fire, a Burning Coal Theater Company podcast series.
Hi, this is Jerome Davis. I'm the artistic director of Burning Coal Theater Company, and I'd like to welcome everyone to Into the Fire, the Burning Coal Theater Company podcast series on all things theatrical. We have a special guest today, a longtime company member, actor, sound designer, and general man about town, Juan Isler, who will be performing the lead role of Lopakin in Burning Coal's upcoming production of Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard, directed by Randolph Curtis Rand. That's April 6th through 23rd here at Burning Coal's Murphy School Auditorium in Raleigh. Juan, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure indeed. We start rehearsals tonight for The Cherry Orchard, something I've been waiting for over 20 years, which is to tackle a Chekhov play. Could you start off by telling us a little about Lopakin? I'd love to hear a little bit about the character, what you know about him so far. I know you're not very far along in this, but what do you know about Lopakin and the play in general? What can you tell us about that?
Well, as far as my character goes, he is a merchant and he comes from a poor family, but he has managed to somewhat make himself wealthy. And he's one of the reasons he has made himself that way because he does not want to be where his father and his grandfather were. And so he's managed to get himself ahead. Sometimes he does some sneaky things to get himself that way. And we find out that he is still in line on doing some sneaky things to get himself that way. But that's the basics of him without giving too much away about what's going on in this production.
No spoiler alerts. Yeah.
Nope, not going to give any.
And Juan, you worked with Randy Rand, the director, on The Wiz, what must have been 7 or so years ago now. That was one of your first plays outside of college, is that right?
Yes, one of my first plays, period. And I didn't ask you to tell the length of time, Jerry. No, that was actually my fifth production in local community theater, and my first production at Burning Coal. Before 2014, I had never done theater, and I did not think that I was going to get the role when I auditioned, but I did, and I'm very thankful. And if for no other reason, that's when I met the wonderful Jerry Davis. So yes, that was my first role at Burning Coal. So yeah,
I was the one guffawing at your asides to the audience, and so I have a lot to answer for.
Yeah, I was going to say yes. I played the lion and I ad-libbed the line, and after the production, the cast members were like, "You're not supposed to do that." Like I said, I was new in theater. I just felt it in the moment. And they were like, "The artistic director was in the audience and you shouldn't have done that." And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be the worst thing ever. And Jerry came up to me and said, "Did you say such and such and such?" And I was like, "Yes." And Jerry was like, "I loved it." And I was like, oh, the cast members looked like, what happened? And the rest is history. So yes.
Yeah, I'll pay for that one for years. But no, it was a terrific show. Randy reminded me. I picked him up from the airport yesterday, and he reminded me that except for a couple of Zoom short plays that he did for Eric Tucker's Bedlam in New York. Eric Tucker, by the way, directed for us years ago. He directed our production of Watership Down. But anyway, other than those things on Zoom, Randy hasn't directed a play since The Wiz. That's
Oh,
the
wow.
last time he directed a play. Yeah, he's done a lot of acting. He's been getting a lot of television work of late and stuff like that. But he's definitely a jack of all trades. But I was really shocked to hear that. But then I realized that you have to take almost 4 years out of that because of COVID, when almost nothing was happening, especially in New York, where the virus was particularly rampant. So I'm really excited about bringing him back again, and not just to us, but to the world of directing plays.
Yeah, well, I think Randy is a wonderful director. Honestly, there were some questionable things in The Wiz, but he was very collaborative on it and allowing the actors to make sure they told a genuine story, because in Black history, The Wiz is very, very important. So we were able to do that with him, to collaborate with him. And then I had not seen him since The Wiz until I turned on Law and Order one day, and he was playing the doctor that got arrested. And then I saw him in what was the production here? Galileo.
Galileo, yeah, he did.
Yeah, and saw him in Galileo, and it was very good to see him in the role as an actor. So
yeah. Let's step backward in time a little bit now to your early days. You are from Kinston, North Carolina, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I am. Yep.
Famously known, I believe, as the hometown of Jerry Stackhouse. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Who
Yes,
is now coaching my Vanderbilt Commodores to 9 wins in the last 10 games. So
yes. So there's a great connection there. But yep.
Couple of good things coming out of Kinston. Tell us about that, your early days there. Was theater a part of that community at all, or other kinds of art?
There was theater in my high school, and I was not a part of it. I was in the chorus and I was in band. There really wasn't time for anything else, but I hadn't really thought about doing theater. But my chorus and band days, I think, helped shape me in theater, because choir, you have to learn songs, and in band you're playing, you have to learn the notes and how to play, and so that kind of helped me understand lines, understand the discipline that you have to have in order to do theater, whether it's local or national or international. So there was entertainment. Kinston is also the home of Maceo Parker, who played sax with James Brown, with Parliament, with Prince, and his oldest son and I went to high school together.
Oh, nice.
I played sax as well, so yeah.
Did his son play an instrument?
His son played sax.
Both of you played sax, yeah.
Yes, we both did. He had a son that was 2 years younger than me that played trumpet. That's both his sons are amazing on their instrument stuff. So I, on the other hand, I ain't touched the sax since high school probably. So we're not playing.
Yeah. Well, do you think you could pick it up? I mean,
I could. I still know where the notes are, and get a saxophone, get a reed. I could. Hey, who knows? One day, I'd love to try to play Charlie Parker, do a play about Charlie Parker, and play Charlie Parker. Actually, use the saxophone. So
I know there was a movie about his life. I think Clint Eastwood directed it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Called Bird. Was that
yeah, with Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker, yeah, who's a fantastic actor.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, another connection here, because I'm a big E Street band guy, and Clarence Clemens on sax is sweetest sound I've ever heard in my life.
Oh yeah. Great instrumentalist.
Yeah. So then college at UNC Wilmington, I believe.
No, college at Winston-Salem State University.
Winston-Salem. Okay. Somehow I had in mind you came from Wilmington somehow. No,
it was a W, but yeah, it was on the other side of
on the other side of town. Yeah, and Winston-Salem State. What was your major there? What did you study?
My major was music, and minor was mass communications. So yeah,
great. And so having finished there, you relocated to the Triangle to be back closer to your family, or what brought you in this direction?
Not immediately. I stayed from the time I went for college right out of high school. I stayed there for 18 years, and I worked various jobs. I started retail right after college.
Mhm.
And then I pursued my minor, and I worked in television for 7 years in Salem.
Right.
And then I got a job in television here in Raleigh and did that for 7 years and decided I was tired of doing television. And I went a different route, and I ended up at NC State full time. And I am a production manager here at NC State. And then one of my nephews decided that I should be an actor, and he got me involved, and the rest is, here I am today.
What was your first show?
It was called Mirandy and Brother Win. It was a children's show at Raleigh Little Theater in the Gaddy side, and it was an hour long. It was all black cast. It was about the cakewalk of the early 1900s. It was set in South Carolina. And so I did that and thought, okay, I've done one thing. It was nice. I'm moving on. That, it was real cute, but that's not going to happen again. And then I was told by Mimi Cowens, who I worked with several times, who I was in The Wiz with. She played Eveline.
Yeah.
She told me that there was a place for me in Wake County Theater because I could act and I could sing. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. But she knew what she was talking about, because there is and has been. So, yeah.
She didn't mention movement or dance.
I can do, but in the last 9 years, there's been a little bit of weight that's been put on. So,
well, yeah, me too. More than 9 years, though, worth, I'm afraid. One, all of that sounds great. I'd love to get into your mind that first day you went to audition at Raleigh Little Theater for that play. Do you remember what that was like, what that experience was like, walking into that building for the first time?
I do, and it was probably different than most people, because I thought I was going to pick up my nephew. And I walked in and I was asked my name, and I said, I said, yeah, I'm Juan. And they said, read this. And I read it to myself, and they said, no, read it out loud. And I read it out loud. And they said, no, read it as if you're that person. And I did that. And there was a gentleman sitting beside Linda Young, and he said, can you sing? And I said, yes. And he played up a scale, 8 notes up a scale, 8 notes back down. And they said, you got the part. Who are you and what part are you speaking of? Yeah. And they were like, the rest of the cast is in there. You play in the part of the old man. Oh, okay. What? And so that happened. But I think the probably the one experience that really let me know that maybe I had something was the burning cold experience of auditioning for The Wiz. I had my resume. My resume had 3 things on it. That was it. And I had never really done the whole, picture with the print on the back of your work. And I was looking over the shoulder of other people who are auditioning, and I'm seeing 2 pages worth of performances. And I was like, maybe I should leave. And about the time that I was pretty much sure that I was about to walk out the door, my name got called. And I said, well, okay, let me just go ahead and embarrass myself. And I went in and auditioned, and I walked in, and I think there were 5 people sitting there looking at me audition. And I did a brief monologue, and I sang a song, and then I left. And I was like, okay, well, it was nice doing it, but I'm sure nothing is going to come of it. And next thing I know, I got the part. So it was was a wonderful experience because it kind of changed me to say, I'm just going to do it. You know, the worst they can tell me is no. But if I never do it, then the worst is I could have done something. So.
What did you know? Were you familiar with the part that you ended up getting?
In The Wiz or
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know The Wiz backwards and forward. Yeah. So it was it was great that it was familiar territory for me as well. So yeah, I knew that one.
Was that a part you were hoping to get when you went in?
Yes, yeah. It was a dream role that I wanted to do. And it's funny that you ask about that because now my theater experience and knowledge was very limited when I got the part of The Wiz, you know, when I started theater. And so I had certain dream roles that I wanted to have. And I've been fortunate that I've actually accomplished them. But again, there again, my world was small. And so now everything that I'm in or everything that I participate in is just like a bonus from the dream role. I've learned so much more by saying, yes, I'll do that. I've never heard of the play before, but why not? And so I've learned to love theater even more as a result of it.
Juan, you've that's a good segue, I think, into the next part of this discussion. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about your political activities of late, the torn presentations that you do with Beltline to Broadway, and if you could talk about that a little bit, but also how you see that fitting or perhaps not fitting with your art.
Okay, so TORN stands for Theater on Racial Negativity. It started after the death of George Floyd during the pandemic, and I was asked by Lauren Van Hemert, who runs Beltline to Broadway, if I would do a panel discussion on racism. And I came up with TORN, and I said, sure. And she wanted it to be, she originally asked me to do an all-Black panel, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a finger pointing session, and I didn't want it to be a finger pointing session. I wanted it to be a learning session, not just for the viewers, but for the panel as well. And I felt like with a diverse panel, then I would get a diverse audience to view it. And so we started, and I wanted the first hour to be about racism in the country, and then I wanted to say, well, in the world, and then I wanted the second hour to be about racism in theater, which is not always just out front in your face. Sometimes it's just things that happen, and because they've always happened. And it was very successful, even more successful than I thought, and it's been helpful. I was told by some that it was going to be hurtful for my theater career, but it hasn't. It's been helpful because theaters are now doing DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging seminars and having committees in their theater, which is great. And I've been invited to participate in different theaters as a result of it, to see how things are going. And when I say participate, I mean as an actor, as a sound designer, and to see that, you know, they're trying to be more inclusive and have more belonging of their cast members. And it's kind of a little funny that about that same time the Chicago Code of Standards came down. So it all kind of worked together to do that. And I think one of the great things is I've been able to establish the fact that I can say, you know, what needs to be said without negative repercussions coming to me. And that hasn't always been the case. And it still may not be the case for some. They may not feel that way, but I try to make people understand that you have certain rights, even if it is a play, even if it is community play, and your feelings should be known. Our theater is supposed to be mind shocking sometimes to the audience. and it is. But I find that it's kind of crazy that we want to do plays that shock the people in the audience and wake them up, but we don't do it as far as cast and crew. And I'm like, so that's not real. So yeah, so it's been a wonderful experience to deal with that. It was scary. It was definitely scary at first because I thought, well, this is going to end theater for me, but I got to do what I got to do. So.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the belonging aspect. DEI are concepts that have been talked about quite a lot over the last few years, but adding the B at the end, belonging, is a new one to me. Explain to me what that idea is.
So, with DEI, a lot of people thought the inclusivity was enough to handle it, and so it was like, well, if there are 10 people in the room and 9 of them are Black and there's 1 white person, I'll go as far as just to do it that way, then they're in the room. But it does no good with the person being in the room if they're excluded from the things that are going on in the room. You want them to belong too, as well. So if there's something that they like or they do that maybe those other 9 don't, then how can we make that person feel comfortable to be here? We let them in the room, but now how do we make them feel comfortable once they get in the room? It's not just about including, it's about making them feel like they belong there.
Is part of it decision making, allowing a minority, small M minority voice when decisions are being made, when the larger and the smaller decisions in an organization are being made?
It's definitely that. One other thing about it is a lot of times the head, I guess I should say, or the leadership will make the decision for the minority without including the minority in before they make the decision. And that's a perfect example. And I'll go back to, say, if it's all white and maybe 1 Black, to have food there and just assume that, well, the Black person is going to want chicken, so we're going to have chicken there. And then the Black person gets there and is like, well, I don't want chicken. I want this, and you don't have that in either, but you didn't ask me what I would like to have. You asked other cast members what they would like to have for the food for the break or whatever, but you didn't ask me at all. And so they're included, but they don't necessarily feel like they belong. And it is something new, but at first I heard it and I was like, okay, here we go, we're adding more letters, but it makes
more letters. We're running out of letters.
Yes, but it makes a lot of sense as to why it is there.
Yeah, I agree. I like that idea a lot. I think that's a very profound idea. I want to run it a little bit further up the ladder. Catering an event seems obvious, but what about when you're talking about decisions? I'm going to put myself out here on the edge here and ask this. When you're talking about decisions about play selection, which is really the beginning point of conversations between a theater and the broader community, how does it work there too, do you think? Is it possible in that context?
Yes, it definitely works there. I think, and it might require just a little bit more work from some of the theaters, but I know that they have play reading committees, and a lot of theaters try to be diverse in the people that read the plays. But I think in some cases, getting a discussion going with the community at large, not hundreds of people, but maybe a 20-person panel. It's kind of like they do TV shows, and introducing them to the work before it's actually being put on, to
Before
see
it's
what their
announced, yeah.
see what their reaction is. You know,
Yeah.
most of the play reading committees now, at least here that I've seen and I've been a part of, are theater people. Well, now that I'm a part of theater, I actually do see things differently than I did 10 years ago before I got in theater. And sometimes it's good to get that reaction from those people that aren't necessarily involved in theater. Like, I know with, as a theater person, I know what this play is trying to invoke and what it's trying to do, but I'm not going to be the one paying the $25 to see the play.
Right.
And so sometimes just having that, you know, especially if it's a play that maybe an artistic director thinks is controversial, I'm like, maybe I need to, you know, the way is, no, you don't need it for that. But something that's, come on, but something
The jury is not out on the whiz.
yeah, no, you don't need to do anything for that. But or even the Wizard of Oz. But something else that's like, this is causing some controversy. This is going to bring some things up. Let's talk with some people, not to say whether we should or shouldn't do the play, but how their ideas on how they feel like it should be approached. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very helpful. So
okay, good. Yeah, that's an interesting thought, and one that I will put forward on the front burner going forward. Juan, thank you for that. Then coming back around, we're reaching our half-hour point where we try to more or less stick to. Just lastly, coming back around to the cherry orchard a bit, if you don't mind, in conclusion, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the larger theme of the play. Is that something as an actor you even think about, or do you try to focus solely on the objectives of your character? There's a famous saying about Chekhov's work, which was that in Chekhov, nothing happens except that one society ends and another begins, which I think is most true of the cherry orchard. Is that the kind of thing that matters to you when you're immersing yourself in a role, or do you just start thinking about the needs and wants of the particular character you're playing?
Well, first thing, I try to get to know my character, and I make a backstory for my character. And then I see where the play wants to go and what lessons my character can help people to understand and see. And I definitely pattern my character's background story to where the story ends up. And I look to see if I can find the message of what the playwright or author wants to convey in the story. I try to read Cliff Notes. I try to read Wikipedia, even though I know Wikipedia ain't always the best, but I try to read things online that are from the playwright about the play and what their thoughts are and what their intent was. And then I definitely go back and see if I'm able to get out of what I'm reading from what they said their intent was. And if I am, then then I feel like I'm doing a good job. And so I try to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I do.
Have you ever had the experience, now that you have quite a number of plays under your belt, have you ever had the experience of discovering something about a character that feels to contradict all of that other stuff that's out there about the play or about the character?
There have been a few at first where I'm like, I don't understand what this is doing, but generally once we get into reading of it and the process, then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. I totally understand. So yeah. So
we had a production years ago of the Taming of the Shrew, which is a notoriously sexist story. But there was a line near the end of the play that has never, in any production I've ever seen, been emphasized. And I won't bore you with the details, but essentially Petruchio is offered money for his success with Kate, with quote unquote taming her. and his response is, "No, I won't have it." And there was something about that kind of shifted my mindset a little bit there, and made me begin to think that maybe he had an objective other than what has largely been said about the character. Yeah. And so, it could go in either direction. It could be he's even more psychotic than we thought. He's turning down the big bucks. But anyway, it was an interesting thing to explore, and I love those moments. Is there anything you'd like to say, Juan, about anything you're working on in the next little while that you'd like to push for us here before we sign off today?
Right now I'm working on the view upstairs at Interact Theater, which starts this Friday. And then I'm doing Cherry Orchard, which I've actually been to see in London, and I cannot wait to get into this. I'm very happy that I've been cast in a role with characters who have Russian names, and I'm an African-American actor. So I'm looking forward to this production tremendously. So that's it.
Yeah, I'm excited about this cast overall. It's a really strong, maybe one of the strongest we've ever put together from A to Z. So Juan Isler, as always, thank you for your work, not just with us, but for the whole community. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to what you have next.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. This Burning Coal production is sponsored by The Classical Station. Listen at 89.7 FM or online at theclassicalstation.org. Our production of The Cherry Orchard will run from April 6th through the 23rd. For tickets and information, visit us at burningcoal.org or give us a call at 919-834-4001.